Hi, everybody. Welcome to Leading for Life Stories, Season 2. My name is Bob Judson, and I'm your host for this podcast, and I'm absolutely delighted to have you here joining me. Thanks very much, and I really hope you enjoy what follows. This week, I thought I'd return to a thematic episode and talk about something that actually comes up an awful lot when I'm doing training work with teams and with individuals, actually, who are going up the leadership ladder, and talk about teamwork and in the context of trust, empowerment, and delegation, which I think are really challenging areas for lots of emerging leaders in particular, people who are taking their first steps on the kind of bigger leadership ladder to work out how they're actually going to do this. How can they let go from some of the things they've done before? Because without doubt, it's one of the key challenges of leadership. Letting go is hard. We all get promoted and move up ladders in organizations on the basis of performance and things we are good at. And instinctively, it is tough to then say, okay, I'm going to stop doing some of those things, let someone else do that, and I'm going to focus on other stuff, which is a bit more foreign, a bit more challenging, perhaps in some ways, certainly until you get used to it. And you're then trusting somebody else or several somebody else's to do the work that you previously did. And it does test your resolve, test your confidence, I think, as a leader as to how you're going to go with that. And the consequences is really easy to end up keeping everything and just add more and not actually let go of stuff and think you're letting go of it, talk the talk, be, no, I'm good at this, I do lots of delegation, but actually what you're still doing is you're still right on top of all the detail. And the more senior you get, and I suspect any senior leaders listening to this will recognize this point, that you really can't do that. You do have to let go of a lot of stuff. You have to get much better at delegation. And there's no absolute alternative to that. If you don't do it, then stuff happens that isn't good. You're going to burn out for you. That's for sure. That's a major factor. Your team is undoubtedly going to get frustrated at the fact that you're still gripping hold of things and you're not necessarily trusting them to do stuff, and they feel kind of disempowered and incapable of necessarily stepping up themselves into where they need to go. And I think it's a useful exercise, therefore, to just have a kind of run through some of the things here that I've learned along the way and I think might be useful to you, because, as I say, it's a subject that comes up a lot in conversations. Starting off then, I think the impact for you as an individual, if you're the leader here, if you do try and hang on to everything, you will, over time at least, become less and less good at what you do. You won't be able to stay across every detail of everything you're doing. You will, in terms of looking up and out in the organization, be necessarily constrained because there's only so many hours in the day and days in the week. And if you don't let go of some stuff, then how do you free up the time to actually do the new things that are being demanded of you in bigger roles? And that leads to challenges. It can lead to challenges in your work life, where actually you start, your performance is falling off a bit. It can equally lead to challenges in your personal life, because some of the time your compensation is you work much harder, you work longer hours, you're pushing to try and do all the things you ever did and more, and overlay stuff on top of that. And that isn't a great place to end up either. So the very clear bottom line here is you need to find ways and strategies of doing things slightly differently. Look through the other lens and look at it from your team's point of view, and whether that's individuals in the team or the team as a whole, then it's really important to grow them. It's important to build their skills, to prepare them for bigger roles, to get them to a place where ultimately they are able to do the job you're doing, and or other jobs that are like it. Move them into a space that they genuinely are feeling better as leaders and they're being developed as leaders. And it actually makes a difference in that if you do share more, you give more opportunity to them, they feel you care more. Because actually there is a risk, you might perceive it, that actually you're dumping a load of stuff on them and you're making them work harder, and they're then going to feel that you're not caring about them. You're actually just making their lives more difficult. And that's a style thing. Obviously you do have to pay attention to that for sure, that you're doing it for the right reasons. You're giving them credit for the work that they actually do. you're using it as a vehicle to to empower them, to make them better, and you're making it very clear to them that that is what's happening, not that you're just dumping stuff on them that you don't like doing anymore, but genuinely giving them things that are going to challenge them, stretch them, move them out of their comfort zone, move you out of your comfort zone in terms of actually doing it, and into your stretch zone, at least, with particularly for the team, possibly the occasional excursion into the panic zone where they feel that they're really going to struggle to do this. And that's not a bad thing. It definitely is a good thing to be pushing the boundaries a fair amount, because that helps them flourish. And the other thing that really helps them flourish is removing the safety net, if you like. If you are the kind of leader who, even if you feel you've delegated and you've said, right, okay, I want you to do this, this, and this for me, but then actually when the work comes up, you look through it, you correct it, you rewrite it almost totally, or you present something completely different to what they've actually prepared for you, then two things happen. One is you've generated a load of extra work for yourself, which is probably not where you want to be. But importantly, from the team's point of view, what are they going to think about that? They're going to look at that and they're going to basically think, well, A, why did I bother? Why did I spend time and effort drafting this presentation or written document, whatever it happens to be, only to have it absolutely savaged and nothing survives contact with you as the boss? And that's frustrating for them. But it also importantly means that over time, they're going to care less about what they put up to you, because inevitably they're going to think, well, actually, do you know what? I can give you a 60, 70% solution or maybe even less than that on the basis that I know you're going to rewrite it anyway. So what's the point in me spending a whole load more time and effort doing it and making it a really polished and perfected document? Because if you don't like it, you'll just change it. And it's an interesting, for me, this was one of the big learning curves personally for me over time. I used to be, still am really, very particular about written work. I was particularly conscientious about grammar and style and formatting and real sort of detail of the way documents looked and the way presentations looked and so on. And I had very much my kind of views on what worked and what didn't work. And as I got into leadership roles in the Air Force with this initially, then what I found was I was doing exactly what I've just described. I was asking people to produce stuff for me, and then I was not reading, correcting it and sending it back to them. I would rarely do that. What I would tend to do is I would actually just correct it as I wanted it to be, and I would then send them a copy of what went final, so they at least saw the final output, if you like, of what had happened. But inevitably that had the same effect, because if actually next to nothing had survived, then they got pretty frustrated. And I definitely saw a downturn in the work of some of the people working for me on the basis that they thought, well, okay, what's the point? We're just going to basically be in a position where he's going to change it anyway. Let's not do that. And I also looked at myself pretty hard in the mirror on this and went, okay, so just because that's my style and that's my way of doing it and that's the way I would write it, does that make the way that this has now been presented to me wrong? And the answer is almost invariably, of course not. Different people have different styles. They'll approach it slightly differently. Certainly, you've got to check the facts, and it's got to be accurate, and it's got to be answering the question and providing the right message and being appropriately corporate and on brand and all those sorts of things. But if it does those, and actually it just is different to the way you would have written it or prepared it, then actually the right thing to do, I think, as a leader is to turn around and go, do you know what? I'm going to absolutely accept that. And even if you're then signing the document, you're signing a document that you perhaps wouldn't have written it that way yourself, but then it's fine if actually it serves the purpose. And quite often, of course, the team that are working for you may well actually be closer to the subject matter anyway. There might be more in the detail, have greater expertise. And so they're bringing a perspective that you can't necessarily bring. Now, I'm not saying, before anybody screams at the into their headphones here, that this is always the case. I mean, clearly there are plenty of times when, as a senior leader, you have the bigger picture view. You'll have a more strategic view, if you like, of what the requirement is. You'll be able to focus more on that, and you may well find something coming up to you that is too in the weeds, too much in the detail, and needs to be changed and corrected in order to hit the mark with whatever the target audience is. So then there's definitely stuff you need to do. And equally, individual capability varies enormously. There will be people that you can definitely trust quite quickly, who pick up your style quickly, know what's going to work, what's going to go through you, that you'll be satisfied with, and they'll respond to that. There'll be other people who are much slower to do that and actually much less capable, if you like, with written words or presentations or whatever it happens to be. So then the effort is definitely around building up their capability. And that's a point I'll come back to in a minute, because I think there's a really important angle around how you treat the team and how you kind of even up the levels in the team. But finding a way to trust yourself to let them produce documents and work for you that you're then prepared to sign off on is a really key step along this particular road. Because one of the big things it does take away that safety net. Because if they find that what you're actually doing is you're taking a look at the document and saying, yeah, that's absolutely fine, you're signing it and you're sending it, and you do that a couple of times, then they will and particularly if they're signing it instead of you signing it, then suddenly the safety net has disappeared. The trapeze artist swinging, high above the arena who doesn't have a safety net is going to cling onto that trapeze a lot tighter potentially than someone who does have a safety net and knows that actually it doesn't matter if they fall off or not. So it's definitely something to think about as to whether you can get to a place where the individuals feel that, yeah, they've got to deliver this because it really counts and it's going to reflect on them, but also the organization. And they want, because personal pride's going to get in the way here, to deliver something that is 100% solution as best they absolutely can. And then minor tweaks and adjustments and a bit of advice here and there might be all that's needed to turn around and actually make the change that really helps. I said I'd come back to the team dynamics piece here, because I think the other thing I see a lot and talk a lot about with audiences is where you have teams of people working for you. In consultancies, this is particularly prevalent. Then quite often people have favorites. They'll have people in the team that they know will get the job done. I mean, the age-old saying, give a job to a busy person because you kind of know they're going to deliver for you. And then that's true to a large extent. And you'll have people who are really good, really capable, and often they will be the kind of go-to individuals that you'll want to turn around and throw this particular problem at, because that is the quickest and most efficient way of getting the work done. Of course, if you've got a team where, let's say, for argument's sake, 60% of it are the people that you use all the time, and 40% of it, and the percentages are arbitrary, they could be completely different, obviously, 40% of it are people that you really don't use unless you have no choice, then what happens is inevitably the busy people, the busy team members, can feel very positive about that. They know that they're the preferred ones. They know they're probably going to get the promotion and they're going to get the credit and all the rest of it. But in remuneration terms, they may well be paid the same as the people who are actually doing an awful lot less, and that may be wearing over time. There's also a very significant risk for those individuals of burnout, because obviously you're giving them more and more to do. They're going to feel that pressure keenly. They might be the sort of people that always step up to volunteer for absolutely everything. And thinking through, how do I actually get that right and get that balance right for the good people is, again, an important step. But equally, thinking of the people who've got development needs in your team. If there are people you don't use, why don't you use them? How can you actually get to a place where you get them opportunities and build opportunities for them that provide the right kind of development challenge that moves them up the capability scale and gets them to where they ultimately need to be performers? Now, again, I'm not saying that that's always 100% possible. There are plenty of occasions, clearly, when it might well not be, and you might have to manage people out of the organization, etc., and they may just not be up to the job. But if you're finding yourself systematically looking at the favorites in your team and pulling them aside to give them the jobs every time, then just have a look at yourself in the mirror and go, okay, let me think about this. How do I actually even that out? How do I get the workload more balanced? How do I share the opportunities, and how do I genuinely develop the skills of those that are less capable in the team? One of the things we used to talk about a lot in the military was we used the term mission command, and what essentially we meant by that was telling someone what to do, not how to do it. And in example terms, basically giving them a box, and a cube, if you like, of a certain size, and the size might be bigger or smaller depending on the capability of the individual. And within that, you've turned around and said, okay, the job that I want you to do is in this box. The size of the box is the boundaries which you have to work within. So someone who's hugely capable in your team might have very loose boundaries. You may be able to turn around and give them an awful lot of latitude to turn around and get the job done. And you know that they're going to do it to the best of their ability, but they're still going to have boundaries. They're going to have things that they can't go beyond. Someone who's less capable, needs more development, then the box is going to be smaller. There's going to be more referral back to you for advice, for counseling, for assurance that they're doing it within the boundaries, etc. But the important thing is giving them a box at all and giving them a requirement to do it and telling them what to do, not how to do it. Then you're giving them the opportunity to flourish. You're empowering them. You're making them feel as though, okay, this is now my challenge. If you give them every detail of how you want the job done and you're very specific about it, then that can be pretty frustrating for individuals who have bright ideas and capability that you are not tapping into by taking that kind of approach. So again, it's something worth thinking about. If you can let stuff go in a way that actually is safe for the organization, giving people that extra latitude, give them the box to work within, tell them what you want them to do, not how you want them to do it. And actually, you might be surprised at the results, because very often what will happen is the people that work for you, they will have really capable ideas and good ideas and a lot of things you won't have thought of. And they'll come back with proposals that are very innovative and more developed and broadening than you perhaps would have done if you'd just done it on your own, or if you dictated to them exactly how you wanted it done. So I really commend it to you as something to try. I think if you can find a way to turn around and make sure you're evening out the levels across your team by taking away the favorites bit and genuinely upskilling the people who need the extra challenge, and doing the mission command thing. Tell them what you want them to do, not telling them how to do it. Let them get on with it. Let them produce a result for you and see what they deliver as a direct result. The next topic that I want to cover in this is just as important, really. It's the whole issue of delegation, which you can argue some of what I've been talking about is already delegation. You're delegating some of the responsibilities down to the team and you're letting them get on with it. But I'm thinking specifically in terms of actually taking away things that you used to do and giving them to other people to make sure that you are no longer doing those at all. Those responsibilities you are now delegating downwards to someone to say, okay, I want you to do this because that's how you grow. So you're getting better. You're getting to a position where in time you have the capability to replace me or to take on another senior role within the organization, or indeed just more generally in other organizations, you have prepared them better for bigger roles. And they get better by being given power, given authority, given capability, and genuinely trusted to deliver it. It's no good giving them the responsibility and then checking up on them every 5 minutes, because they don't feel empowered. They feel watched. They feel micromanaged. They feel, again, another military term perhaps, but long screwdrivered. If you're reaching into the organization with a very long screwdriver and tweaking the screws and changing things, then actually that's quite corrosive, ultimately on the organization, because they don't feel that they are trusted. And that trust equation piece for people as part of a team is a really, really important aspect. They need to feel that you trust them and that you're going to let them get on with it and develop their skills. And it's really, really important that you try and find a way to do that. And again, by way of example, I mean, I think, people often say, oh, this is just really difficult. I've got all these responsibilities. Only I can do this. I need the spotlight's on me, and I have to do this. Otherwise, I can't let go. And I genuinely encourage people to challenge that and look in the mirror again and have a really, really sort of harsh introspective look at whether that really is the case. Because often it isn't going to be the case. Often you will absolutely be in a position where not only can you delegate, but you really should delegate for a number of obvious reasons. One is nobody is indispensable. You might suddenly be unavailable for all sorts of reasons, not least health, or some other family crisis, or just transport, or something that has stopped you being in a place for a particular time. You don't want the organization to grind to a halt as a result of that. You want people to have the chance to step up and flourish when when those opportunities present. And they'll do that if you give them the chance to practice it and to be empowered and so on and so forth. And you also want to be in a position where, as I said right at the outset, you are shedding things that you're doing because that gives you more space, both in your personal life, but also in your professional life, to look upwards, outwards, think bigger thoughts, do stuff that you should be doing as a more senior leader, because actually you've got rid of some of the things that you were doing previously and let other people get on and do it. Temporarily, it's important too. If you're in a leadership role where you're in charge of something, then having somebody who genuinely can step up in your absence and at a moment's notice is really important. The example I use a lot when I talk to groups about this is when I was commanding Kandahar airfield in Afghanistan. It was a huge job. I mean, there were 25,000 people on that base. There were 170 airplanes. I was responsible for all of the force protection for the entire base, all the logistics for the entire base, the entire air environment. So there was a lot going on a daily basis. It was extremely busy. And I had, during the 9 months I was in Afghanistan, I had 2 periods of leave. And the first one of those, I actually went on a holiday to Oman, and my wife flew out from the UK and met me in Oman. And I was determined that I needed time, space to recharge batteries for me, but also what I didn't want to do was feel that my team felt that I was constantly reaching back into them. I wanted to just let them get on with it, see how they stepped up to the challenge, and go with it. And I had a deputy commander who was a very capable individual who I said to him, "Hey, right, okay, there are, for argument's sake, 4 things going on this week that are, while I'm away, that are really important, that I'm paying attention to, and I've done a lot of preparation for. These are the things. You need to take those on, and would spend some time talking about those. And then my argument would be, right, okay, now everything else, you just deal with it. I don't want to hear from you apart from for 2 reasons. You call me if somebody dies or if something happens on the base that's going to make the international news. Anything else, I want you to just deal with it. Tell me about when I get back." Now, I wouldn't for a second pretend that I went away for a week and I didn't look at a single email and I didn't have any interest at all in what was going on. Of course, I paid attention, but I didn't reply to anything. What I did was just let that all run, and on the basis that what I wanted to do was get back a week later without 1,000 unread emails that I needed to catch up with. I wanted to make sure that I was in a position where I was reasonably on top of it. But 2 things directly happened as a result of taking that kind of approach. One was I had a much better holiday, which was really important, and without being flippant about it, I mean, it was a busy command job. I needed the space to recharge batteries and get back ready to get back into the mission, on full charge. And the other one was, of course, my deputy commander had a very interesting week because he was genuinely empowered. He had all my sort of authority, as it were. He was able to do everything that I could, and he genuinely felt that he didn't have a safety net at that point. He was basically working on his own. I'd put the pressure on him, unspoken, that if you're calling me for anything other than those 2 specific things I'd laid out, then actually, why are you calling me? You shouldn't be doing that. You should be just getting on and dealing with it yourself. And that's exactly what happened. And of course, he did a fantastic job. I got a very good brief when I got back. I was up to speed very quickly with everything that had gone on. And it was, a really useful experience for me, useful experience for him. And that's something I've done lots and lots of times over various different jobs I've been through. And it always works. Because I always think if you genuinely mean it, if you really do give people the responsibility, they do step up in a remarkable way, and they will perform way above perhaps even your expectations, and very often above their own expectations as well, because it gives them that opportunity to flourish, and they value it. They think they feel you care about them, and as a leader, you are genuinely trusting, taking care of your team, etc. Now, again, if you listen back to some of my previous podcasts, talking to General David Petraeus, we talked a bit about this, and his comment was he had the ability to do exactly what I've been describing. He also had the ability to be a good micromanager when he needed to be, because he had some people that he genuinely needed to keep really close tabs on. And I think that's right. I don't think you can't say this is a one size fits all. You're definitely going to be in a position that some of the time there'll be things going on that you cannot just let run free without your active involvement, either because it's just expected that you are going to be involved to a much more active level, or because you don't have people that you genuinely can trust and feel that they really are going to deliver in your absence. So I'm definitely not suggesting it's a one-size solution here, and I'm definitely not suggesting that any of the advice is completely binary. You should just do it this way and that's it. There will always be variation. It depends on the individuals and the team. What I am suggesting, though, is that the concept of trust, empowerment, and delegation is fundamental to a leader of a team. And if you get that right, it makes your team better. It makes your life better because it actually genuinely creates the space for you to do the things you should be doing as a more senior leader and focusing on the bigger challenges that are out there and ahead of you, rather than actually looking down into the minutiae of the organization. And having a process within that allows you to stay on top of the detail when you need to and ensure that you're regularly being updated on the key issues and you're keeping a close eye on the team you have and the people you have within that team and making sure you're comfortable with what level of delegation am I giving and empowerment am I giving to any individual within that team at any particular moment is obviously really key to this. But overall, it's definitely something I would absolutely commend to you. I really hope that's useful. I think as I say, it's an area that I talk a lot about to people, and I think if you look yourself in the mirror and go, how good am I at this? And if you're great at it, fantastic. If you're not so great and you do some of the things I've been talking about, like you have favorites or you're not very good at delegating or you don't actually empower people very well or you correct all the work that comes up to you and send off something completely different to what's been drafted, just have a think about how can I actually change my approach? What can I do that genuinely gives more flexibility to the team below me and empowers them more and develops them more? And I think you'll find it helpful. That's it for this week. As ever, I'll be really, really grateful for any feedback you've got, but I really hope you enjoy this and I'll see you again soon. Thanks very much.